What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. We have some news, not linked to the Raptors, but one that could affect them. So the Portland trailblazers have made Jusuf Nurkic available for trade, and we know the Raptors could definitely use a bigger body. They can always use a center. So I know what you're thinking. Why not trade for Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis instead of a Jusuf Nurkic? Well, I'll explain all of that in today's video. If you guys want to like this video, that'd be amazing. If you guys want to hit the subscribe button, that'd be awesome as well. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. And as you guys know, I do like to give out shoutouts on this channel. So the shoutout for today's video goes out to Tom Duke. So Tom, thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. And let's move on to Jusuf Nurkic. Now, when we talk about Jusuf Nurkic and why you would potentially trade him over someone like a Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner, you take a look at the salary cap situation for the Portland trailblazers, who are in a really messy situation this season. They're really struggling to even make the play-in. And you look at the contract for Jusuf Nurkic specifically there, $12 million, and he's an expiring contract. That is not one that's going to be hard to trade for. Now, I know people may say, well, why would you trade for an expiring contract when you need a long-term solution? And although it may seem like Jusuf Nurkic may be a band-aid situation, I do think the Raptors could definitely benefit from having this. And I'll explain further in just a second. But when you talk about trades, you have to talk about salaries, which is huge for the Raptors because you have to match salaries in a trade. And Jusuf Nurkic is only making $12 million. And on top of that, he's an expiring contract, which shouldn't require the Raptors to really give up a lot when we talk about young assets. And when we talk about trading for, let's say, Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner, I think you definitely have to include a lot more assets than you would with a Jusuf Nurkic. And if it doesn't work out with Jusuf Nurkic, you can always just let him go at the end of the season. It's not a big deal. It's not like you're tied into his contract for several years. He's not affecting your salary cap situation. Another reason you trade for Jusuf Nurkic, when we talk about him, is he's going to be cheaper to get than some of those guys I've mentioned, but also because he's a great rebounder. As you see there, 10.3 rebounds. He gives you some points as well, and he's actually a very underrated passer. It may not show it on the stat sheet, but he's averaging 2.4 assists. I think he'd probably average a bit more than that. He's a pretty decent passer for a big man, and when we talk about Raptors needing a bigger body, that paint presence, he's nearly 7 foot. He weighs 290 pounds, which is more than Joel Embiid. So Jusuf Nurkic, when we trade for him, this is the thing I want to talk about. When you trade for Jusuf Nurkic, it's not like a Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner where you need to trade for him, give up a lot of assets, and then you need to start them. When we talk about, a lot of people talk about are developing your young players, particularly Precious Achiuwa. Jusuf Nurkic could be someone we can bring off the bench or just keep there and play him in certain situations. He's not going to be one that's going to be demanding 30, 40 minutes a game. So it's also great to have Jusuf Nurkic for those situations where, you know what, you can play him in certain matchups. You don't necessarily need to give him heavy minutes. You don't have to even start him. And when you talk about Jusuf Nurkic, let's talk about his defensive rating. Now, as you see there, for this season, his defensive rating is 107. So the big concern for when the Raptors do trade for a center is that, are they a good defensive player? Now, I know 107 isn't the greatest defensive rating, but he's also playing for the Portland trailblazers. We do need to keep that in mind. But when you look at what he played, his defensive rating with the Denver Nuggets, when he used to play for the 101, 102, and for the career, for his entire career, his rating, defensive rating is 104. And we also have to take into consideration, guys, remember this number, 107 is his defensive rating this year. As I talked about the Portland Trailblazers, they're not a great defensive team. So you see the Portland Trailblazers are ranked 27th in the league when it comes to defensive rating, and they're giving up 112.4 points per 100 possessions, which isn't great at all. So Jusuf Nurkic, his defensive rating is 107, which is, again, Portland Trailblazers have some lazy players in Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum who don't necessarily play great defense. And let's move on to some other stats as well when we talk about why the Raptors could use him. We talk about that paint presence, we talk about rebounds, and this was before that Brooklyn Nets game, but you see where the Raptors are ranked. For those of you who did not catch my last video, the Raptors are ranked 23rd in the league when it comes to giving up 26.1 rebounds in the paint, and that was so evident. Again, I'll touch on some of the points I touched on in my last video, is the fact that you see the Raptors playing great defensive possessions, but they just cannot secure that rebound, which leads to a lot of second chance points. And again, these stats are some of the ones I showed in my last video for some of you guys who may have missed it. But the Raptors ranked 28th in the league. Again, this was before the Brooklyn Nets game. 14.7 second chance points is what the Raptors gave, and they absolutely killed them in that last possession of the game where the KD missed and the Nets got an offensive rebound. Heck, you had young players who have played maybe 20, 30 minutes the entire season going off and grabbing rebounds against the Raptors. So Jusuf Nurkic, you can get him for cheap. You can get him for cheap. You don't give up a lot. If it doesn't work out, you let him go. You don't have to start him when you bring him onto the team. Now, I will say this though, all of the positives I've talked about, he doesn't space the floor, so that is something you'd have to take into consideration. But this is something some of you guys have touched upon in the comment section as well. When we talk about Jusuf Nurkic, when we talk about the Raptors needing a bigger center, well, people will say, well, they're just going to do the same thing they did to Marc Gasol in the playoffs, right? Just pick and roll. But that is towards the end of the game where you need crucial minutes from guys like Cam Birch, who's, again, he's been actually, him and OG have been upgraded to questionable for Warriors game, and they have been practicing, which is good news for the Raptors. But I do worry about Cam Birch. He's got those leg and knee issues this entire season. I don't know if that's going to get any better. He's, I believe, 29 years old. So I don't know if that's going to get any better. It's always good to have a backup center in there just in case. And we have guys like Cam Birch and Precious for those late game situations if you're worried about pick and rolls. But for at least the first 2 or 3 quarters of the game, you definitely need a bigger body in there. You need some paint presence. You don't want the Raptors scrambling everywhere to give up second chance points. And you see that. There's a reason why all the Raptors players crash the paint, because we don't have a center. Obviously, both our centers are out currently, but the Raptors centers we have right now are not exactly legitimate centers. They're 6'8", 6'9" guys that can't really hold their own against bigger bodies. So Jusuf Nurkic comes in. He gets that paint presence. He does a lot of things for you. Gets those rebounds. He's actually, believe it or not, guys, he's a really good passer. He may not show it on the stat sheet, but I do want to ask you guys, do you think we should acquire Jusuf Nurkic? I mean, he is going to be cheap. He obviously doesn't space the floor. Those are some concerning issues when we talk about Jusuf Nurkic. Do you think he'd be a good fit with the Raptors? And what do you think we'd have to give up for Jusuf Nurkic? I want to ask you guys. Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, guys, there is a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, which of these players averaged the most minutes played per game in one season? So the highest number of minutes played per game in one season. Is it A, Kyle Lowry? Is it B, Vince Carter? Is it C, Damon Stoudemire? Or is it D, Fred VanVleet? So whoever answers this question correctly and answers it first gets a shout out in my next video. Again, guys, thank you for your support. And if you guys are still watching this video, guys, thank you so much for watching. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.